Alice, thanks for joining me today this Tuesday after Valentine's Day weekend. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit hungover from the love bombing. How was your Valentine's weekend?
It was good. I have a bunch of kids, so it's more about them and their new loves than it is for me and the adult husband that made it all happen, right?
I love that. That's so cute. Well, we're going to be talking about love today since it is February and we just finished Valentine's Day. We're going to be talking about different types of visas that we work on for couples and for both married and fiancé. We'll talk about some different tips and tricks for making sure that your case is as strong as possible, because we know from working with clients, we don't want you and your loved one to be separated a day longer than you need to be. Once you found the one that you want to be with, you should be with that person. We want to make that possible here at Molina Immigration. But before we get started talking about that, I thought it would just be fun to talk about our own love lives. I've got a fascinating situation going on, and I'll share a little bit about. But you have such a beautiful love story. Would you please share with us a little bit about you and your husband's love story?
Yeah. So this is actually a big year for me. 2026, we celebrate our 25th wedding anniversary. So it's actually really exciting. I mean, once you get to a certain point, like birthdays don't really matter, anniversaries kind of come and go, but 25th is a big deal. So we're actually really excited about it and have some exciting things planned for the year. But my husband is Mike, and we met in elementary school at our church. And we were actually boyfriend and girlfriend for whatever that means in middle school for about a year. And then, we weren't together, but we were friends for many, many years, close friends through high school and college, and actually got together at the end of college. And we've been together ever since. So, yeah, pretty sweet, unique story. I think we have pictures of us together in middle school. And so it's really cute to bring those out because, we have 5 kids together and, sometimes more. But they enjoy, our kids are the age that we were. We have a 23-year-old, but we also, our youngest is in 7th grade, which is how old I was when I was together with my husband. So I always tell my kids every date is a potential mate. So
That's
not
true.
that you're going to get married to everybody, but don't waste your time if you know it's not going to work.
Yes, that is so true. And I love that you've gone through so many different seasons with Mike. I'm sure that you guys have a million stories to share. I also had a long marriage, almost made it to 25, not quite, but I'm recently single, as you know, and out there in the dating world. And let me tell you, I am having so much fun meeting people because, I was dating, the last time I was dating was over 2 decades ago. So they didn't have, I mean, it's totally different. And we didn't have dating apps and online stuff. And I've talked with our clients before about how they've met, and most of them meet, through dating apps. But being actually on the apps myself is a riot. Like, it is so entertaining, educational, fun, so many fun people, such a great way to meet people. And because like you're saying, any potential date could be a mate and you don't know. And it's so fun to get to know somebody and see, is there a connection? Is this going to go anywhere? And so, yeah, I love working with the clients that we have that are older, that have maybe already finished a marriage or 2 marriages or 3 marriages, and they find this love. I think that finding love later in life, once you have kind of grown up and you've done all of the things, it's a really different experience. So I am living my best life right now and highly recommend it to anyone. I think actually, people used to tell me dating is no fun. I'm like, no, I disagree. Dating is fun if you're doing it right. So that's one of the things I love about our job, though, actually, is all of the different love stories that we get to hear. When I became a legal assistant back in 2000, that was my favorite part of the job, was just sitting down with the clients, hearing how they met, they were so in love and it was new. And, just that something about young, new love is just so energizing, inspiring, beautiful. So we're going to talk about some of our favorite clients. Of course, we're going to leave out details and names for their confidentiality, but just some beautiful stories, because we're talking today about love without borders, and how really, like, people are people anywhere around the world. We've kind of created these crazy little imaginary lines that separate different countries. But in reality, like, we are all the same. And so actually, one thing about the dating apps is you can put your location. Let's say I'm going to travel to another country. I can put my location as that other country, like maybe even weeks in advance, and say, hey, I'm going to be here from this date to that date. I'm looking to, make some new friends, go out on some dates. And so, yeah, it's really incredible. So I'm going to be taking some trips here at some point, and having some fun around the world. But the world has just become so much smaller because of technology. And so that's what we're seeing, is that maybe you live in a small town, or you live in a place where you've dated everybody in your town, and like, you have not found that mate from those dates. And maybe your mate is in another country. So let's just start sharing some stories. We're going to talk about fiance visas first, because that's usually, if you're meeting somebody abroad, that's usually the first step that you're going to take. But we'll compare that to maybe, decision to just get married. Have you ever had somebody that's like gone abroad, met somebody in person for the first time, and was just like, I'm sure about this, let's just get married. Like, I don't want to mess around. Let's get married on this trip. Have you ever seen that happen?
Oh yeah. I mean, and just preparing for this today, like you and I have both been doing this for so long, we probably have countless stories. But I think, the first one that comes to my mind is this sweet couple. They were, I think, in their 50s or 60s, and they had both been married before. And unfortunately, their first marriage spouses had both passed away. So they were both widowed, and neither of them were looking to remarry ever. And they had friends that introduced them, and they hit it off. One was here in the United States, one was in their home country, and they just started a friendship. And it was companionship. It was that, missing that companionship that they had had with their spouse. And, it just turned into something more. And they got married, or he went to go and visit her and meet her in person for the first time. And they both, they're so sweet. They both were like, we had to get married. It was just, we had to get married right away. And they did. And it was the sweetest story. And their families, they both had adult children that were very supportive. But they did get married, and we were able to bring her here to the United States. And I still actually get to see them every once in a while. They like to bring me food, which I think is the best part of being an immigration attorney, right? Is getting food from people from all over the world. But every once in a while, they'll stop by my office and just drop something off. Super, super sweet couple. But I love those stories.
What a beautiful story. Yeah. So have you watched 90 Day Fiancé on TLC? Have you followed this?
I have not. I have heard about it, and everybody tells me they're like shocked when I, as an immigration lawyer, say that I haven't watched it. I don't know. I'm not big into reality TV, but my kids watch it, and they think that that's what I do. So.
Yeah. It's a guilty pleasure for me, for sure. I would love it if one of our clients decided to be on 90 Day Fiancé, because part of the show, they like include the attorney and what the next steps are. I'm like, yes, sign me up. I want to be on TV. So far hasn't happened, but let's talk about fiance visas, because I think that show is popularized it, and so people understand that you have, as the name of the show says, you have 90 days to get married once you get here. But let's back it up. How does the fiance visa work? You've met somebody, you decided you're not ready to get married right then and there, but you are ready to propose and move forward and bring the person to live with you in the United States. What's the next step?
So you've got to file a petition with immigration to recognize that person as your fiance. And there are certain things you have to prove. You have to prove, the legitimacy of the relationship. You have to prove that you have physically met in person within the last 2 years. And you have to prove that it's your intent that they come to the United States for the purpose of getting married within that 90-day period of them arriving in the United States. And then once they do, they come to the United States and get married and then file the next application that recognizes them as your spouse.
Yeah, there is an exception to the meeting within the last 2 years. I've never done it myself. I'm curious if you have. It's very limited exceptions for like religious reasons if they're not supposed to meet before marriage. But I was curious during COVID. I didn't actually get somebody to hire me for this, but I was curious if that might be an exception, with all of the travel restrictions and whatnot. I don't know if you've ever heard of that or done that for anyone, but I just wanted to put that out there. It is possible.
Yeah, I know that it is possible. I have never had that situation where somebody fell into that limited exception. I do know colleagues that have. I don't really know how COVID impacted that. I'm sure, I mean, it impacted almost everything else. So I'm sure that there were things that, ways that did impact with travel restrictions and things like that. But I personally did not have to deal with that situation.
Yeah. So what's the benefit of doing the fiance visa over marriage visa, for example, in your opinion?
Well, when people call us, they ask that question all the time. And, my best advice is look, you live your life. Don't change what you're going to do for immigration. Okay. You do what you're going to do, and then you tell us, and we'll let you find the pathway for immigration. Because you don't want to tell somebody, hey, don't get married because it's better for immigration. You certainly don't want to tell someone, do get married for purposes of immigration. You don't want to do that either. So people call and they ask that question. I'm like, look, if you're in a legitimate relationship, okay, and the place that you're at right now is, I really think this is leading somewhere. I advise them, look, you file the application, you pursue this petition to have the government recognize them as the fiance, but you do need to understand that when they come to the United States, you're saying that the intent is to get married within 90 days at that point. But for some people that are still, maybe they've been together a few months and they think that this is leading to marriage, but they're not like 100% sure ready to get married today, the fiance visa would be a good option because you still have several months where immigration has to process your application. You can always change your mind. You can always get a few months down the road and be like, you know what, this didn't work out the way I thought it would. And I've had that situation happen before, and they were so glad that they ended up going the route of a fiance visa. So, it really just is up to each person and their relationship to figure out where they are and what level of commitment they're ready for. But the fiance visa does give you a little bit of a buffer if you're not 100% sure yet.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And even once they get here, there's no requirement that you actually get married. You do have that 90-day to figure
Right.
it out. And that's what a lot of the drama on that TV show is the person arriving here because it's such an adjustment. And I think people, a lot of our clients underestimate it. Relationship on its own is a challenge, but imagine like leaving your home that you've always known, going to a country, maybe you don't speak the language, you're not able to work right away. So you're going to be at home. You're not going to have friends, the social network, the family. It's a lot of stress on these couples. And I try to, our job is just the immigration part of it, but I try to also like have those conversations with the clients just to let them know, like, it's totally normal, totally natural to have this kind of like difficult, learning curve to being in the US and try to like set them up for success. Do you have community that you can introduce them to that maybe like speak the language or something? So our job is multifaceted, right? We're not just attorneys. We're also doing all these other things to help our clients as well.
Yeah, it can be very isolating for sure. And that is highlights one of the reasons that I just have such a high amount of respect for my clients. I mean, the people that we help are coming, they're leaving everything they know to come to a different country. And like you said, learn the language, meet people. A lot of them are leaving all of their family. And to do that for love, is a really sweet story. But you're right, it's a big challenge and can be a big stressor on relationships. And so, having that 90 days, I mean, that's 3 months where you get here, Maybe you live together, maybe you don't. That's okay. And you have that time to really interact on a daily basis in relationship and figure out, is this really my person? But if you get married within 90 days, then you just take the next step in the process. If you don't, that's okay too. And then the person, can go back to their family and their country and, move on with their life as well.
Yep, exactly. So you mentioned the petition has to be filed. It's called an I-129F. Once
Mhm.
that's approved, what's the next step?
So once USCIS approves that here stateside, then they will contact the National Visa Center, the NVC, and they'll create a case for that beneficiary, the fiance who lives in a different country. And then at that point, that person will begin the process of consular processing, where they will fill out a application for a visa. They will provide additional evidence, their proof of identity and documents and eligibility to come to the United States. And then they will have an interview at the consulate in their country to take the next steps on getting their visa approved, which then allows them to travel to the United States.
Yeah. And processing times vary. I think that's one of the questions that people always ask us, how long is it going to take to get my fiance here? Like, I've been waiting years to find my person, and this is my
I
person, and
know.
I want them here today. Well, nothing with the government is going to be overnight. And processing times depend on the country and, the volume of cases and whatnot. In general, I usually say about a year to get here. Would you say that that's a good estimate? The whole process, right?
Yeah, I mean, fiance visas do seem to process a little bit faster than marriage cases. And so, we can get a fiance visa hopefully approved within about 9, 10 months. And then you have another 2, 3, 4 months of consular processing to until you get to come to the United States. So that's about what I tell people, is right about a year as well.
Yeah. Right. And so then once they're here, they get married. Let's talk about the next steps after that. Like, one of the questions I always get is, when will my fiance be able to work? Because not necessarily, yes, for the financial aspect of it, but also just to be able to get out of the house and feel productive. So talk about that process.
Yeah, so after they get here in the United States and then they get married, then you've got to file another application. And yes, there's another filing fee. So everything with the government and immigration is going to have a filing fee, right? So once you do all of that and you've already paid all these other fees and consular processing, you get married and then you've got to pay another fee. So you file another application to get your green card or your resident status. Okay. And generally that's going to be for a 2 year period of time because you've gotten married within 2 years. And so then at that point, when you file that application, you can also file the application for a work permit at the same time. And those do process fairly quickly. Obviously everything is subject to change and I don't give anybody guarantees, but I think right now we're seeing that those applications for work authorization that are filed with a marriage case or an adjustment case are generally being approved within 3 to 6 months. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely within that. So somebody might say 3 to 6 months, like that's a
I
lot of
know.
sitting around the house. So again,
Mhm.
people, we try to prepare our clients for this. Nothing is going to be overnight. There can be delays that are beyond anyone's control. It requires a lot of patience, perseverance, and I'm always just so inspired by our clients that face these, especially right now in this administration. We're still seeing a lot of approvals, but we are seeing longer processing times, a little bit more frustrating processes, and so it does require patience. It requires faith. It requires hope. But their love, darn it, like it just carries them through, and it's really inspiring to me.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing that we're facing right now are these travel bans and these visa bans. President Trump has a list of 75 countries where it's really, really, really challenging to come to the United States if you were born in that country or if you're a citizen of that country. And a lot of people miss that it can be one or the other. And so people often say, oh, well, I was born in this country, but I also have my citizenship in Italy, and that's not on the list. And I'm like, yeah, but unfortunately it applies because your country of birth is on this list. And so that is a big challenge for people. There's different categories of the travel ban and the visa ban on what countries it applies to, what kind of visa it applies to. Right now, a fiance visa is technically a non-immigrant visa. So for countries that are listed on the immigrant visa ban, we're still hopeful that we're going to have successes on these fiance visas because they are technically a non-immigrant visa. And so we are still filing those. We are still seeing those scheduled for consular processing interviews, and moving forward to where maybe someone who already got married from one of those countries is not going to be eligible because of the current travel ban.
Yeah. Just another way to highlight how important it is, especially right now, to talk to an attorney early on in the process, because you might go even before you meet in person, because you might get there and get swept off your feet and get excited and get married, and then sorry, that like just ruined your chances for bringing this person here. We have seen travel bans in the past. It's not a new thing. Unfortunately, right now this is probably the worst travel ban we've ever seen. I believe there will be some lawsuits, and so I'm hopeful that eventually this will work itself out, but it will require a lot of strategizing, creativity, thoughtfulness for sure. We are no longer in a day and time when you can go and meet somebody, look up how to do this, fill out some paperwork, do it on your own. Please, please, please don't do that. Not just because we need your business. Like, no, we have seen some crazy things happen just because people didn't know what they were doing, or the government switched something up. And you really, really need to have somebody on your side. In fact, next month, we're going to be bringing a topic for St. Patrick's Day called "It's Not Luck, It's Called Having a Good Attorney." And so it's just so important right now. And you and I have been doing this a long time. We've seen a lot, and we know how challenging it is right now. But I always want to bring, that hope and that perseverance that we're still seeing approvals. It's just even more important to talk with an attorney as early on in the process as you can.
Absolutely. I know that hiring an attorney can be a big investment for some people, but I always tell people it is always cheaper to hire an attorney at the beginning of your application than to have to hire an attorney because there's an issue later. It's almost always going to be cheaper, and it's going to be better to get things right on the front end, and to hire an attorney that really focuses their practice on immigration law, not an attorney that does like insurance and immigration on the side, right? I mean, there are times that you can maybe find good practitioners, but immigration law can be very, very complex. Right now, under this administration, policies and procedures change almost daily. And so finding a practitioner that really focuses on immigration law practice is really what you want to do. And it needs to be a lawyer, not a notario or somebody, an immigration services provider that also does like tax forms or something. Like there's a lot of really good-natured, good-hearted people that want to help from those types of service centers, but they're not attorneys. And it's really important these days to get you a good immigration attorney.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Let's switch gears for a minute. I want to talk about just a reminder that those of us who are older will remember this. I feel like the youngins, they just think this has always been the case, but there was a time when same-sex marriage was not allowed. And it wasn't until 2013 when the Defense of Marriage Act was struck down that there were some states where it was allowed, but because immigration is federal, for immigration purposes, you could not, have a fiance visa with someone of the same sex, or a marriage visa. And so let's talk about that, like what that has meant for equal opportunity, right? I basically right now half of my career in immigration was before
Mhm.
same-sex marriage, and half is now after. It feels like now it's been forever, but it really wasn't that long ago, like 13 years ago. So have you been able to help any same-sex couples, and how has that experience been for you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've done countless. I don't have a number. We've done so many, both fiance visas and marriage cases. To be able to help a committed relationship have permanency and stability, and remove the fear of immigration enforcement or an unknown status. It's just a privilege to be a part of that, no matter what the couple is like, to be able to do that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is fairly new, relatively speaking. But even now, under President Trump, a very, very conservative administration, that is still the law. And so same sex couples can file for fiance benefits, they can file for marriage cases. And so that should not be a hesitation nowadays, because that is completely acceptable and permissible under the immigration laws today.
Yeah, absolutely. Love is love is love is love. And love, like we're saying, has knows no borders, knows no boundaries. And I'm happy that we get to an opportunity to help all clients, right? No more restrictions. So let's go back to talking about the application. You said first the fiance, and then when they're here, they get married and they file for their green card. Let's talk about people that are already here. Maybe they got married, they met here. Maybe the person's been here a long time, or maybe a short time. How does that process work when you marry in the U.S.?
So there's a lot of factors to consider. Another reason it's important to have, your case screened by an immigration lawyer, but there's a lot of factors. Not only are they looking at the marriage and the lawfulness or legitimacy of the marriage to the United States citizen, but they're also looking at the eligibility of the person to adjust or get a green card here in the United States. And some people can do that, and some people unfortunately cannot. And so the people who can do that are generally people that have been admitted to the United States previously using a visa of some kind. Even if that was many, many, many years ago, and I have a great story to remind me to come back to that. But even if it was many, many years ago, if you were admitted with a visa and then later marry a United States citizen, you probably will be able to adjust your status while you remain here in the United States. That's not a one and done for everybody. This isn't legal advice, but that's the general rule, right? But for people who entered the United States without a visa, meaning they've never been given permission by immigration to come in with a visa, they probably will not be able to adjust their status while they remain in the United States. And there are some exceptions to that, for people that have been here a really long time and maybe have really old petitions. Another reason to kind of make sure that you know your immigration history and can explain that to your attorney. But in those cases, it's kind of a three-step process. Sometimes two, depending on, how long they've been in the United States, and if they need a waiver for things like unlawful presence, they, may have to obtain certain waivers, but then they would need to leave the United States and complete the process through consular processing, where they'd have to go through an interview and things like that in their country.
Yeah, let's hear your cute story.
Okay, so I had the sweetest little couple come to me, and they were high school sweethearts, married right out of high school. Had a baby, in high school together, and they got married. Just this sweet young couple, and the wife had been brought to the United States when she was very, very young, like baby, toddler, something. And so in her mind, she was here illegally. And so when she came to me, that is the information that she gave me is, I'm illegal, is what she told me. And I was like, well, you're undocumented. You might not have papers, but we're going to work on that. But anyways, so she had seen a lawyer previously that had said, oh, well, you have to leave the country and you've been here a really long time, so you have unlawful presence, which means you'd need a waiver. And she didn't have a parent, that she wasn't married at the time and didn't have a parent that had status. And so anyways, there's all these things. Well, now she comes to me, she's married to a United States citizen. And, I'm going through and asking her these questions. And, I'm meeting with her in my office and she goes, oh, my mom said that I have this. And she pulled out this paper. Well, it's a border crosser card, which is a visa, which means she entered lawfully. She was permitted to come to the United States. And so, they had held off on their immigration process for years because they didn't think she had any options here in the United States and she couldn't afford to go back and didn't know what to do. And anyways, so, through screening, through meeting with them, we were able to determine that she's eligible for her lawful permanent residency to adjust here in the United States. And we filed that and that was approved. And, she and her family are living here with stability and without fear right now. And it's a really humbling thing to get to be a part of somebody's story. But the gratitude of knowing that, someone found that for her when she didn't even know that she had that option. She did not know that was a visa entry. She did not know that. And so, it's really exciting to get to be a part of that, a part of those.
I love it when that happens because and it's another highlight of how important it is to, like you said, know your history, be able to have the documentation to show an attorney who knows how to do these cases, doesn't just make an assumption based on your story, because so many people don't know how they got here. They were a baby and they don't talk about it in their families. And so I love our process here at Molina Immigration because we offer a free consultation process, a discovery call where we'll look at documents, we'll ask the questions that need to be asked in order to know what it is that we need, what the person needs to have done for them. You actually are in charge of that, so you see all of this information come through. Talk to us a little bit about that process.
I love the intake process at Molina. I've been doing immigration law for 20 years, and the way that we do things here is so unique. And I see so much value in it that I just love sharing with people our intake process. It's unique and it's different. And so for some people, it's not really what they expect. So I like to explain to people what it is. So we have a free intake process, which is a screening process. That does not mean it's a free consultation with an attorney, but it is a free screening process by an attorney. And what that means is, people will call us or email us and we'll get information from them. We have specifically trained intake specialists of a great team of girls right now. They're really, really great. And they know what questions to ask. And they obtain specific kinds of information. And then they submit that to the attorney, which right now I get the privilege of overseeing that, and I love it. And I will look at all the information provided. And people can also submit documents if they have documents they want us to look at. And then I will go through and I will review the information. I will screen for options, immigration relief options. And then we're able to explain to people, like, maybe we have more questions. We need some more information to make an assessment. We'll go back to them and say, hey, thanks, but the attorney has these questions. Can you provide this additional information so we can make a complete assessment? That's all still free. But then eventually we're able to make a determination on whether they're eligible for relief or not. And one thing is, we're not going to lie to you. If you're not eligible for relief, we're not going to just lie to you and take your money and waste your time and everything else. We're going to be honest with you. I tell people I'm going to respect you enough to tell you the truth, good or bad. And so, if we don't see any immigration options for you, we'll let you know that. And then at least that gives people peace of mind that they know. They know where they stand and they know what risks they're taking, or how to talk to family. But for some people, we're able to make an assessment and give them options, immigration options. And we'll say, hey, the attorney's identified these two options for you. Here's what this one looks like. Here's what this one looks like. Here's how much they cost. And then people get to talk and ask questions, and they're talking with specialists. They're not talking directly to the attorney at that point. They're still talking to the specialist, but it's all overseen and screened by an attorney. And we're able to offer that service free because we have our specialists, and we're not, having an attorney that's using their time, and you're not paying for an hour-long consultation with an attorney whenever you're just relaying information. And so I really, really like our intake process. I think it opens up the ability for people to know where they stand without necessarily having to break the bank from the beginning, just to find out from an attorney maybe they don't have any options. So I think it's a really great process. I love it. So
Yeah, I love it too, because I don't have to be booked out for months at a time and have people complaining like, why is it taking months to come and talk to
yeah.
see if I have options? Usually within like 3 to 5 days, people
Yep.
know what their situation is, know what we can
Yes.
do or not do. So I think it's a win-win for everyone. So I'm really happy that we've been able to kind of perfect that. It's taken a while, but we've perfected it now. And you're right, we do have an amazing team working with us. Let's talk a little bit about our team. Actually, let's brag on them. Some attorneys, when I first started out, I worked by myself. I think you did the same. And there's some benefit to that, but the challenge with that is that you are limited to your time. If I get sick and I'm the only one there, then there's nobody else that's going to work on that case until I get better. If I want to take a vacation, same thing. So having a team has really freed us up to be able to help a lot more people very efficiently, provide very high level of client service. And it's just more fun too. We get to work with some really amazing people.
We do. We have an incredible team, and the intake team is really, really great. I love working with them. They're so smart. They're so kind and knowledgeable. All of them are fluent in English and Spanish, and so they're able to communicate clearly in those languages. But the team of ladies that we have right now, uh, you know, they're just so wonderful, and I love, love, love working with them. They really know what they're doing. They're highly educated and knowledgeable in this specific field, and so a lot of times they are asking the follow-up questions before even having me to come back to them, because they really know their stuff. And so it's really a privilege to get to work with them. But you're right, it's very quick. I mean, somebody could call and have that initial conversation with our staff, and I'm usually reviewing that same day, next morning maybe. But we're generally reviewing those within 24 hours, and so you're hearing back from us very quickly on whether we need more information, whether you have no options, or whether you have options.
Yeah, I love that. Well, let's just wrap up real quick. A couple of other things about these relationship-based applications. You mentioned earlier that when someone's been married for less than 2 years, they have a conditional status. Talk about what it takes to remove those conditions.
So essentially, when you file for immigration status based on a marriage, and you've been married less than 2 years, the government gives you conditional status for a 2-year period of time. And essentially, what they're trying to do is curb marriage fraud, right? That was the whole purpose that started. And so they want to see, are you still married in 2 years? And so 2 years later, if you're given conditional status, then 2 years later, you have to file something else with immigration in order to remove the conditions on your conditional status that then would allow you to convert to permanent resident status. And if you're still married, you file that petition jointly with your spouse and say, hey, it's still going great. We're still married. This is legit. And you provide some additional evidence to show, hey, we're living together. We have a life together. Really is a legitimate marriage. And the government can adjudicate that together. There are some times where maybe it doesn't work out and you're not married, but it really was a lawful, legitimate marriage at the beginning. It's just something happened and it didn't work out. There are times that you can file on your own, and you can file a waiver of that joint filing requirement by proving that it was still lawful and legitimate marriage at the time. Or, if there's a divorce or, God forbid, a death, there are ways that you can get around that joint filing requirement. But the purpose of that is to prove that it was a legitimate and lawful marriage. And so, as long as you can continue to show that through evidence, then that is likely to be approved, and then you continue on to permanent residency. And also keep in mind that in order to file for United States citizenship, you have to have residency for a certain period of time. And that conditional residence, 2 years, counts. And so a lot of people will file their removal of conditions after they've been married 2 years, and it's still pending because the government takes a really long time to adjudicate those applications.
Mhm.
And so they become eligible for US citizenship while that application is pending, and we can file that as well. And so we actually got an interview notice this morning for somebody who's got their I-751 petition to remove conditions pending, as well as an application for US citizenship. And they're going to go have an interview on both of those applications at the same time. And oftentimes filing the citizenship application makes them move a little faster on the 751. So,
Yes.
there's the strategy behind it too, right? So
Sure.
it's doing all of the things.
Yes, I love it. Before I got into immigration, I used to think like you just got married and the next day, like your green card comes in the mail. And then the following day, you can apply for citizenship. And we have clients that call and they don't know what they're asking for. They're like, I need to get citizenship for my spouse. Like, well, there's a few steps we got to follow first. But yeah, it's such a complicated process. The government does not make it easy. It's a lengthy process. And I hopefully this conversation today is helping to highlight the importance of doing things right. Sometimes I chuckle when I talk, especially with the men. It seems like it's only the men who talk like this, but they sometimes want to save some money, and so they're like, "I'm smart. I can figure this out. I'm going to file this on my own." I say, "Sir, what kind of impression is this going to give to your fiance, soon to be wife, when, not if, but when you you encounter delays and complications because you don't know what you're doing? It's not going to make you look very good. It's not going to get off to the right start. It's going to be very stressful for you." And the smart ones say, "Yes, you were right. I need to acknowledge that this is complicated and I need to hire an expert." And I say, "Yes, sir, that is the right answer. And you are going to thank us when we're done here."
Well, and also to add to that is, not only could it cause a problem with the application, but it could actually put their spouse at risk. And, falling out of status or not filing the right thing or checking the wrong box could potentially cause a pretty big problem. And so you certainly don't want to put your new spouse, at risk, right?
Mhm.
They've given up their whole world to be with you, to come to the United States. Let's do it the right way, man.
Sure. It's so funny. Well, I think
Yes.
we're going to end there. I don't know if there's any other comments or things you wanted to talk about today, but I feel like this has been a really helpful conversation. I really appreciate your knowledge as always, and your willingness to come on here and share it with those who are looking for love worldwide. Without borders. I want to hear from those of you who have either found love or are looking for love. What's your story? I love hearing these stories. Please tell us your story, or please tell us, like, what is your dream, and what vacation are you planning next, and when are you going to meet that mate? Right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And thanks, Abby, for having me on and to talk about this. I just think it's so important that people know there is a process. Like you said, it's not just getting married to a United States citizen that protects you. You actually have to let the government know about that marriage, and you have to file papers and applications. And so there's not an automatic thing.
All right. Well, I just want to say I love you, Alice. You know,
You
in
too.
in Latin cultures, they don't celebrate. It's not like a romantic. It is a romantic thing, but they also say it's the day of friendship and love. And so I
Yeah.
love that it's very it's much more inclusive. And so I just want to say I
Yeah.
appreciate you and I love you, and thank you for joining me today.
I feel the same way. Thanks, Abby.